my theme music.
Buff Nation, how's it going on your Tuesday afternoon? I am Russ Dornish for Buffs News Weekly, and welcome to Buffs News Weekly Live, our weekly live stream on our channel here, where we discuss all the past week's current news, anything going on right now, both in having to do with Colorado, but also the NCAA as a whole. Today, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper. I covered a lot of it on this past weekend's video about the NCAA settlement that occurred last week, which should drastically change the landscape of college football as we know it. I don't think enough people are actually talking about this story, are talking about the ramifications, and actually know what's going on. There has been some definitely misconceptions, misinformation, and honestly some confusion all around. I'm going to try my best to collect my thoughts along with using the sources from all over the internet to help you guys figure out what's going on, what do we actually know, what do we not know, and what might we eventually find out here in the future. So that's going to be up first, and then we're going to go into, of course, the big discussion here in Buffs land, and that is the recruitment of Julian Lewis, who, of course, had the internet ablaze last week with the hashtag We Want Juju campaign from Colorado fans everywhere that got so big that even Julian Lewis himself responded. And today, Julian Lewis was at a recruiting event and was asked by a number of different news outlets about his recruitment status, what's going on, and of course, where Colorado stands in that process. So we will chat about that. We will go over kind of what was talked about, what were the highlights of it, and what we can expect. And then I want to know from you guys out there, if you're watching live, if you're watching this later on, comment down below your thoughts on if Julian Lewis has a chance to flip, whether that's to Colorado or Auburn, Indiana, or is he staying put with USC? I have a couple of minor notes with that could eventually change his recruitment, even though he says he's locked into USC, that I think not a lot of people are looking at, but we'll take a look at that here in just a little bit. So first up, let's actually cover the NCAA settlement. So for those of you that did not know about this over the weekend, the NCAA settled on a number of antitrust lawsuits that they had going against them. Now, what those lawsuits entailed and what they were about was they were different athletes who were going against the NCAA in regards to them being paid for what they said was the proper way to pay them, in the fact that the NCAA was profiting off the backs of NCAA athletes. And not only were they profiting off of it, not sharing that profit, they were also stopping the athletes from being able to profit off themselves as well. So they were getting the money off of these kids. The kids were not even able to market themselves, whether or not they shared the profit. Now, what happened as a result of this settlement, and why did the NCAA come up with this settlement? Well, actually, that's an interesting part, because the NCAA settled because it looked like they were going to lose the case. Had they lost the cases that were going against them, it was estimated that somewhere around $20 billion would have been lost by the NCAA, which it does not have, and it would have likely ended the NCAA with bankruptcy and more. And so the last-ditch effort for the NCAA to just keep everything as it is as best they can was to come to this settlement where they got to settle and agree to about $2.4 billion in the settlement. And what that will cover is it's going to cover paying past athletes through the year 2016. So Division I athletes back to 2016 will get a cut of the settlement, and then it also paved the way for future revenue splits. So the future revenue splits that we see here, that is for sure happening starting potentially in the year 2025, the fall of 2025. Now, it has to still be approved by a judge. That has not happened yet, so we are not 100% on all this. But if the judge approves it, that is what will happen. The split will look like roughly $20 million per Power 5 team. The other leagues will have different agreements in place as far as how they will split revenue, and it's most likely going to be based off of their TV deals and what they're able to do, which is going to be a lot less than those Power 5 conferences. Now, the Power 5 conferences, like I said, roughly estimated going to be about $20 million each. Now, one thing that's been said a lot by a lot of different people, including the media, and I keep wanting to pull my hair because one, I don't think anybody truly knows the answer to this. And two, I've seen about 10 articles that agree with what I'm thinking, and only one person in the media that doesn't agree with that and keeps going on all these shows and stuff talking about what this means. But they're all saying that the 20 million is a cap. So it's going to be the most that a player can make at their team. They can maybe make NIL, endorsement deals on the side, but this is really going to stop the big payments and all the money we're seeing thrown around. I don't think that's true. I think that this is just a minimum. I think this is a floor of what the players are going to get paid, which is they're going to get divvied out this 20 million. Now, how that gets divvied out, we also don't know. And that's been talked about across the internet all week. And that is because that 20 million is supposed to be spread by the universities. There's no rules. There's no, you have to do this sport has to get this much. It's up to these schools to determine where that money is going to go. So that $20 million split, how is it going to be split up? Now, the one thing they will need to take into account, I know what you might be saying is, well, why don't they just put the 20 million towards football or basketball? Why don't they just do that? Those are the big sports. Just give them the money. Let's move on. The problem with that is Title IX. Title IX is, of course, the law that states that sports need to be divvied up equally amongst genders, amongst, just the sports that you're allowing. And so our guess, and a lot of people's guesses on the internet, is that 20 million will have to be split up evenly between men's sports and women's sports. So I could see schools even pick one sport from each gender and focus all of the revenue there. And then the other sports will just continue the way they are. They technically can do that. Now, the only other problem with that is going to be the revenue lost from this 20 million, because this 20 million is money that the schools were originally getting. So they are now getting a cut taken directly out of their budgets and put towards paying players out of that share. Now, in a moment, we'll go over what that means as far as the athletic departments and how that's going to affect them. Next up is, like I said, the splits among schools they'll decide. Here's the big one. Does not affect any benefits that players already receive. I've seen a lot of people ask that question. Are they no longer going to get scholarships? Are they no longer going to get any of that stuff? Everything that they get right now stays exactly the same. This payment is on top of that. So right now, at a minimum, the players are going to share 20 million. How that's done, that's up to the universities. I did read an interesting article in Forbes about this just a little bit ago. And the interesting part that Forbes put is for the public universities, when they are paying players. Now, again, they can spread this out however they want. Because they're a public entity of the state, in order to pay their players, they will need to prove that the payments those players are making is market value for their position. So what that means is they're going to have to prove why they are paying one player this much and another player this much. Again, adding some kinks and issues that now the schools are going to have to navigate. Okay, that's not going to be simple. Again, this is going to be all part of the next probably 12 to 18 months of figuring out how they're going to do this. This is just the initial bit, but there's a lot of moving pieces. Now let's go to the stuff that maybe we don't for sure know about and how that might affect what is going on. So what we don't know that has been talked about ad nauseum by so many different sources, What do we not know? Collective status. So a lot of people are saying collectives are done with. They're gone. There's no need for them anymore. That's what's going to happen. Not true. I've absolutely read every article. Every article talks about collectives will still be there. Now, their roles might change. Some articles I've read, some different media members have said that collectives will now go in-house. And while they are in-house, they'll be run by the actual program and they'll be the ones in charge of distributing the $20 million. Others have said they can stay completely on their own. In fact, there is a head of collectives, I didn't even realize this, in the country for colleges. And they said that this has no effect on collectives and they're going to remain exactly the same. The other part of this is how will NIL and collective payments be now going forward? Is there a cap? Like I said, the person who's been talking about this the most is Carl Reed. I've seen at least 3 interviews with him over the weekend, and he said that the players should be upset about this agreement because it's going to limit how much money they can make compared to what they are now. I don't think that's the case. I do understand part of his point, but I think he's also missing a big part of this, which I've read at least 3 different articles, one from Forbes, one from 24/7, and one from the CBS that talked about this. And what they discussed was the fact that on top of the $20 million share, schools can then use their boosters, they can use donations to up that cap to allow them to put more money into their sports. It's just that $20 million that needs to be equally spread, and then from there they can do what they've been doing pretty much already. The part that I agree with Carl Reed, and it's the next part in this, which is going to be the transfer portal. How much is this going to change the transfer portal and how NIL and all that works? I think this is going to lead to contracts for players. And a lot of the articles we read and that are online say the same thing, that these minimum payments are going to require an opt-in agreement by the player to get paid by that. And they can put in different things like a required amount of time at the school or buyout clauses for other schools. So again, I think this is going to lower what we're seeing with the transfer portal. It's not going to be as big of an impact. So that is going to be a big change. So you're not going to have players changing schools through the transfer portal to get money. Okay, you're not going to see the Bear Alexanders of the world last year where they leave a great opportunity at Georgia to go to USC. And it's obvious because he's even talking about how the fact he's making so much money through the move. That is obvious. That's happening, but that probably will not happen anymore. Thankfully, that's one of the positives from all this. The other thing we're going to need to talk about is the other negatives, which is other sports. So your non-revenue generating sports. For those that don't understand what that is, that's going to be your sports that are always taking a loss at universities. Somebody pointed out a few videos ago for me that talked about how I mentioned that CU's athletic budget for the prior fiscal year showed that Coach Prime and the CU football team were doing really well. They pointed out that overall CU operated at a massive loss and this was all bad. That is true, but most athletic departments operate with a loss. There are going to be teams that operate with generating revenue. Then there are going to be teams that take that excess revenue and they cover their sport, and then they operate at a loss as an overall education and athletic department. And then from there, they're going to take endowments. They're going to take different boosters and stuff to offset those losses. Okay. I know a little bit more about this. I've studied a lot. I have a finance background. That is a normal thing for athletic departments to function with, to show that they operate at a loss. Now, if they're going to lose out on another $20 million, they are going to have to cut costs somewhere. The 2 options that they have for cutting costs, one, are going to be non-revenue sports. We are going to see athletic departments shrink when it comes to the sports that they provide. I'm sorry, that's what this settlement is really saying. They're not going to be able to pay for every sport. They're not going to be able to pay every player from every sport. It's going to potentially eat into those non-revenue sports. Your swimming, your tennis, your track, your cross country, all of these sports that are non-revenue generating. Now, the other thing that it's going to affect is athletic department staffs. Just so you guys know, the staffs over the last 10 years at college athletic departments have ballooned. And not only have they ballooned in salaries. I was reading an article that talked about what this could affect. And it could affect, like we said, that mid-level department bloat. So here's an interesting stat for you guys, okay? The stat comes from September 30th, 2023. Ohio State's Human Resources Database lists that 139 athletic department employees are on staff with salaries that exceed six figures, are over $100,000. So that is to tell you kind of what's going on with athletic departments and where that money is going, because honestly, athletics right now are a booming market when it comes to revenue because of what they make off the players. Now we're going to take some of that away and give it back to the players, as we rightfully should. We're going to have to find ways to cut costs over here to pay over here. And that is where it could happen. Athletic departments, people are probably going to be losing their jobs to fulfill that money. But again, absolutely worth it. The players deserve it. And then the last question I have that we really don't know an answer for is the non-Power 5. The non-Power 5 schools, how are they going to operate with this? We thought the competitive balance with the transfer portal was large. We're now going to see a much bigger shift. FCS and the FBS non-Power 5 are not going to be able to compete with the money that the Power 5 schools are going to have. The Power 5 are going to be about 20 million. The other schools are going to be less. They're going to be percentages based on their conference deals, what's going on. So again, let's just remind everybody that without Coach Prime, we would be stuck in the Pac-2 with the potential that when the Pac-2 goes long enough, is it going to have the TV deal to keep up with the other Power 5 conferences? Or are we going to be shrinking down to a Power 4, Power 3, Power 2? And where is Colorado going to be sitting in that conversation? I believe that with Coach Prime on the staff, that is going to keep us always relevant in the conversation of being in one of the big conferences. No matter what people say, they can say anything they want negatively about it. The fact is, Coach Prime brings eyeballs, clicks, information, everything that a conference, a TV deal, all of that wants and more, okay? No matter what you want to say about the competitiveness, no matter what you want to say about the roster, it is going to always be the case that Coach Prime is going to bring the eyes and attention to wherever he is. So the top leagues are going to want Colorado so long as they have Coach Prime there. Okay, so that's going to be an important aspect. Very interested to see what happens with the non-Power 5 conferences. Now, I see a number of people already here in the chat. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Dub, Will, Theo. Feel free to comment in the chat your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen? How do you think this is going to affect the sports and NCAA as a whole? And then also what you guys potentially think this might have an effect on Colorado itself. So very interesting stuff. It's kind of crazy. I think every day we're going to find out more and more information. In all honesty, I think this was a last-ditch effort by the NCAA to stay relevant and a part of the conversation, because as we've seen over the last year, after losing court case after court case, the NCAA has become almost powerless to actually police the schools. That's the other thing that they're hoping with this. By finishing this deal and doing this settlement, once it is finally judged on by the judge and accepted, the next step probably for the NCAA is going to be moving to Congress to try and get some antitrust deals in place to protect themselves, not only from being sued in the future from other players, but also allow them a little bit more power to control what is going on with the schools and players. And by that, they can do things like put in rules in regards to NIL. That's the big thing right now, and that's what I didn't get about what Carl Reed said with this becoming a cap. Until there is actual rules in place that give the NCAA power to police what is going on behind the scenes and allow them to put penalties, nothing's going to happen. The Tennessee case still happened that said that the NCAA cannot do anything about NIL. They cannot affect it. They cannot police it at all. And until that gets fixed with some kind of player agreement, union, whatever that may end up being, I think it's still going to be the wild, wild west when it comes to how players are paid. It's going to be still crazy. The one positive is we're not going to see the same transfer portal issues that we're seeing this offseason with the unlimited transfers and players literally transferring multiple times during the offseason or committing to multiple schools in the offseason. I think we're moving towards some more regulation on that side. But again, payments still going to have those issues. So yeah, that's where we're looking at with that for now. Again, we'll keep you guys updated. We will try and be on top of it with any sort of changes or updates or maybe some clarification that comes out in regards to this. So please stay tuned. Of course, make sure you guys are following us and subscribed so that you catch us when we have those videos that dive into that. And check last weekend's video where I did a nice scripted deep dive into this NCAA settlement. Pretty low viewer count on that video, one of my lower ones. So make sure you guys go check that out. If you're over on Twitter right now watching, make sure you can jump in the conversation. If you come on over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button and join the conversation live so I can get you guys' questions here later on. Again, appreciate everybody who's joining and watching right now. Looks like we have about 17 people watching, hoping we get that number up here in the next few minutes. But let's move on to the other big news of the week. And that is, of course, the hashtag and CU fans blowing up the internet this past week with the hashtag We Want Juju. The Juju Lewis story and recruitment continues. And today we had some more developments in that story. So while I discuss this, let's take a look at some of his videotape to show you just why this is so important and this is such a big deal, because honestly, I think he is going to be a great quarterback wherever he goes, and I just hope that that ends up being at Colorado somehow. Now, of course, today we had the interviews with Julian Lewis because he is at one of the big national recruiting conferences where all of the top recruits are going together and get to talk to the media and do a whole bunch of stuff for that. He had some interesting tidbits that he gave to both Steve Wiltfong and then, of course, Josh Newberg from On3. And we got some very different things out of both interviews. Wiltfong's really showed the point that while Julian Lewis is locked into USC, he says that Colorado is right there. And in Wiltfong's comment that he even made, he said that it looks like it's between USC and Colorado, where Colorado's really the biggest threat to flip Julian Lewis. Whereas Josh Newberg's focused a little bit more on USC. He asked more questions about USC, but in all honesty, I think it was just him answering the questions he was given. And while he keeps saying he's locked into USC, there's a couple facts that need to be talked about. He is on visits to other schools. He is talking to other coaches. He is taking this process very seriously. And while he's locked into USC, if something happens or something catches his eye or gets him exactly what he's looking for in those conversations, he will flip. The difference here is if he was completely locked into USC, he would not be visiting these other schools. Let's look at Bryce Underwood's recruitment, the other top quarterback for the 2025 class. Now, Colorado offered him. He did come on a visit at one point, but he committed to LSU, and since he's committed, we have not heard a peep out of him, out of his camp. He's not going on tons of visits. He's not making national news talking about all these different schools that he's looking at. No. The guy is locked into LSU. You can say that. Look at some of the recruits we've had. Look at the Jordan Seaton saga. He was never really locked into one school or the other. There was plenty of comments that he was going to this school or that. In fact, of course, getting those crystal balls to Maryland at one point, and then out of nowhere, he ends up at Colorado. So to say what we have learned as Colorado fans, if you are new here or if you're a non-Colorado fan, is don't say that a player is not coming to Colorado until they sign on the dotted line. Okay, we know what happens on signing day. So until he signs that letter of intent with USC, we are still in play and we are still going to be trying to get Julian Lewis. Okay, I know there was comments about the leagues. I know there was comments about California. I could also pull up the comments that he made several months ago where he talked about California and the fact that he didn't love how big it was and just the overall feeling about it. And Boulder was just a different city to him because it's a much smaller feel, much more comfortable feel for him, and would be a much easier transition as a young kid to rather than living in LA, Los Angeles, go from small Georgia to living on his own in Los Angeles versus coming to Boulder. That was talked about not even several months ago, and that's kind of been forgotten and lost today when I've seen some USC fans comment on the Julian Lewis stuff. So that's what we're looking at right now. I think we still have a big chance to get him. We almost got him to the spring game. He just had his 7-on-7s that he had to go to. Couldn't find the time to get away from that and be able to come to Colorado for that spring game, but he almost did. And of course, we have the last official visit, which I do think is a big deal. I feel like that visit is going to determine between him and USC or Boulder. Okay, so that visit, talking to Coach Prime, figuring out what it's going to look like, talking about to the players that are there, the new players that are there, the potential players that could be there, that's all going to be very big things. Now, here's my last comment that I want to talk about of why I think USC could potentially ruin this recruiting. And by that, I do not mean Lincoln Riley. I mean USC has not won something in quite a while. They have underperformed if you really think about it, especially having Caleb Williams and that team they did over the last couple of years. I have seen some different posts, some different articles in regards to USC, how Lincoln Riley could be on the hot seat if USC does not compete and succeed. Now, with USC going to the Big Ten, they are not going to have an easy schedule and an easy time over there. It's not going to be that simple of just dominating and going and winning the Big Ten Conference. Now, if they win the Big Ten Conference, absolutely 100%. It's Lincoln Riley's world. Julian Lewis probably has a bigger chance. But as USC potentially could struggle this year, that could lead to Lincoln Riley going elsewhere. I don't know for sure that'll happen, but I just have that feeling based on what we're seeing and looking at. That could be something that could sway and determine what happens during this recruitment. Okay, so again, who knows? That's just me speculating. Again, I don't love to speculate. The whole idea of my channel is to just give you facts. But when we do these lives, the idea will be I will give you a little bit more of my opinion. We'll discuss this. We'll have a little bit more of that fan conversation. That's what this is. I will never admit or say that I am some football expert. I am simply a fan here, hanging out with other fans, having conversations about the sports we love. And that is what I want to see this particular stream be. Now, my Saturday news videos, the idea of that is to just be factual and only give you factual information in an easy to consume, short summary video. Okay. That is what I look for on that. That is how I've differentiated myself from other buff creators that just kind of throw together videos the moment any piece of news comes out and they just tell you just straight up, here's what happened, and that's the end of the video. I want to give you guys more info, more context, and more organized and easier to digest news on a weekly basis. So before we get into questions, feel free to start piling those questions up in the chat. Come over to YouTube if you have questions or want to add any comments in regards to either the NCAA settlement stuff or the Julian Lewis stuff. Feel free. But I want to let you guys know some scheduling stuff. I am going out of the country next week, starting on Friday until the following Sunday. But I'm going to substitute my news videos on Saturdays for a live stream that day. So I am going to live stream from out of the country. You guys will get to chat and see that, and we can have those conversations. Let's not give them ad revenue. But yeah, so that's going to be the plan. I'm going to do some live streams where I'll cover the news. Won't be as formatted, but it'll be the best that I can do being away from my computer and being able to edit and have the higher production value. So that's what's coming up here in the next week. I'll have my Tuesday. So we're going to stream Saturday evening, Tuesday, and then the we'll probably do the Friday or Thursday evening of the following week, or I may wait until Tuesday and just make it up that way on that stream. And we'll talk about the news that way. So again, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following me on Twitter so that you know when we go live, when our videos post, all of that stuff. We are this close, by the way, to 1,000 subscribers. We are on the cusp of it. So if you're one of the 22 people watching right now and have not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to go and do that. We just recently hit partner status, but I want to hit the full partner status. So we do now have the ability to have super chats, members on the accounts, but I really just want to get to that top tier because the ads that you guys are forced to watch anyway will now share some of that revenue to help the channel keep going and put more money back into the channel. So yeah, that's what we got going on right now. Hope you guys are good with that schedule. And then we'll be back to the regular schedule the following week. So in 2 weeks or so, we'll be back to our regular schedule on Saturdays with really no disruption until the end of August when I will be going on vacation. Officially, no streaming, no videos at right before the season starts. It's kind of my pre-season vacation that I'll be taking here to rewind, get ready for the big long haul, and as we jump into the actual season. So on top of that, if you guys don't know already, there's already been some well-off videos and Reach the People media videos for today's workouts. Today was the very first workouts of spring. We're finally back. We're in it, and we're ready to go on the long haul to next season. It was awesome seeing the new players introduce themselves. A couple things of note real quick before we kind of conclude this stream. There were some questions about players who were missing. There was a reason for that for some of them. Ben Boozy was not there. He is currently finishing up his graduation. He is taking online credits to finish that up for high school, so he can't join the team just yet. We heard that directly from him over on Twitter. And a couple others. We obviously don't have the new running back from Arkansas that just signed this past week. Augustov from Arkansas, freshman last year coming in, will join and compete within our running back room. So he has not joined the team just yet. And I believe that is it as far as players that officially are missing. If you guys have any others that come up or anything like that, let me know. Happy to look into it and see where they're at, what's going on, when they're going to join. But a couple of the big notes, of course, BJ Green, he's in the house and he is determined. If you guys have missed it, of course, if you guys aren't subscribed to their channel, but Buffed and Prime is the best channel when it comes to getting a deep dive, learning about football on a much higher level, and really understanding the intricacies of the game, positions, plays, assignments. All of that is so good. He has some really great videos over all of the newcomers, including BJ Green, in one that I think BJ Green has probably seen and has heard the call outs on him for some kind of lazy things caught on tape. I have a feeling he is going to be determined, because today when asked about himself, he said, "I don't talk a lot. I'm just going to show up and show out." He is focused and ready to go. So I'm excited to see what he does. And that defensive line room is just impactful and amazing. So yeah, get in your questions right now if you want to ask any questions. Otherwise, we will wrap up here in a moment. Appreciate the 24, 25 of you that have been in here. Love seeing, anybody watching these lives and also recorded later on. It's always exciting. It's always, very impactful for me to see people appreciate the work that I do, appreciate the video and content that I'm making, showing that you guys are enjoying it. And so as long as you guys are enjoying it and you guys are watching, I will continue to make stuff and continue to expand and grow what this could potentially be here at this channel. The hope is in the fall that we'll do game recaps and also game previews of the following week, and just talk about what we can kind of expect to see and what we're feeling. and give you guys a mouthpiece and a location to come and air out your grievances, talk about what's going on. Disagree with me, I don't care. I am happy to hear a disagreement. I don't know if you've noticed, you check out the comment section, there's always some people that have to throw shade. I'm not one to really go hard back at somebody. I'd rather just say I appreciate that opinion. Here's why I believe this. Thank you so much, and move on. But that is kind of where we're at. So for our Tuesday live show, looks like that's all we got. Thank you, Dub Will. Thank you, Theo, for commenting and jumping in. Anybody else, feel free to drop comments in the regular comments. I'm happy to respond to them. I usually respond to all our comments. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything like that, I will see them. So I appreciate that. Again, hit that subscribe over on YouTube, Buffs News Weekly. We are currently sitting at the live counter of subscribers. We are sitting at 983. That's right. We are 17 subs away from 1,000 subs, which was my goal when I started this channel. And I've already come so close to hitting that. So I can't wait. I know we will hit it here fairly soon because of what you guys can do. So if you're somewhere else, share this video, let other people know. Bring them on over. Let's get that to 1,000 subs. Appreciate you guys. Before you go on the way out, hit that like if you're over on YouTube. Thank you guys so much on Twitter, and I will catch you guys later. Thank you guys so much for Buffs News Weekly Live. I'm Russ Dornish. Talk to you guys later. Sko Buffs.